If you're managing AWS at any kind of scale, you definitely know the feeling. You've got hundreds, maybe thousands of resources spread across dozens of accounts. But how do you really know they're all being monitored correctly? Well, that's exactly the kind of chaos we're going to tame today using a really powerful AWS feature you might not have heard of, Cloudatch Telemetry Config. So let me ask you this. Are you 100% certain that every single one of your critical production resources is being properly monitored right this second? If you hesitated, even for a moment, you are not alone. Because in any complex environment, things are always going to slip through the cracks. And every single one of those cracks is a blind spot, just waiting to become your next big outage or security incident. And this is what I like to call the AWS monitoring headache. It's that nagging feeling in the back of your mind that you just don't have the full picture of your observability. You're trying your best to enforce standards, but let's be real, you can't be everywhere at once. So what do these gaps actually look like? Well, take your critical EC2 instances, your main servers. Are they sending you metrics every minute, or are you stuck on that 5-minute default? Because that 4-minute difference, that can be everything when you're trying to catch a problem before it becomes a disaster. And what about your VPC flow logs? Without those, you have zero record of your network traffic. It's like trying to solve a crime with no security camera footage. And for your serverless Lambda functions, no X-ray tracing means debugging is just a painful, frustrating guessing game. But the real kicker, trying to police all of this manually across all your accounts, it's just a losing battle. So if doing it all by hand is basically impossible, what's the solution? Well, thankfully, AWS has given us a way to solve this from one central place. Instead of running around chasing hundreds of individual resources, Cloudatch lets us create a true single pane of glass to see and manage it all. The best way to think about Cloudatch Telemetry Config is like your own personal monitoring auditor. Its entire job is to scan your whole AWS organization and then report back with one simple unified dashboard. It's not guessing. Its whole purpose is to answer one critical question over and over. For this resource, is our monitoring on or off? And this, right here, this really shows the huge shift in thinking. The old way, it was a nightmare, right? Manual checks, clicking through a dozen different consoles and different accounts, always finding inconsistent setups. It was completely reactive. The new way, though, is all about being proactive. It gives you that central dashboard, that unified view, and, this is the important part, the tools to actually enforce a consistent standard everywhere. Okay, this all sounds great in theory, but you're probably wondering how hard it is to set up. So let's just walk through it. And trust me, you're going to be happy to hear it's surprisingly simple. All right, so first things first, and this is super important. You have to do this from your main AWS organization's management account. Now, the real magic happens at step 2, enable trusted access. This is where you give Cloudatch permission to securely peek into all your other accounts to see what's going on. Once you flip that one switch in the settings, Cloudatch just starts. It automatically kicks off and begins discovering every relevant resource across your entire organization. And after that discovery process finishes up, this is your reward. This overview page gives you that instant, at-a-glance health check. And wow, look at that. We can immediately see a huge red flag with our VPC flow logs. Only 60% are configured. A 40% gap is a major security blind spot. We haven't even drilled down, and we already know exactly where our biggest problem is. But of course, a high-level chart isn't enough. This is where things get really actionable. You can drill down into this Discover Data Sources view and see every single resource. And look, we can filter right down to find that specific VPC that's missing its flow logs. This isn't some vague report. It's literally a to-do list with the exact resource ID you need to go fix. Okay, so we've found our problems. That's fantastic. But finding the problems is really only half the battle. What if this tool could not only find the gaps, but automatically fix them for you? Well, that's exactly what we're talking about next. We're moving from just auditing to active enforcement. This right here, this is the absolute game changer. They're called enablement rules, and they completely transform this tool from just a passive dashboard into an active governance engine. It stops being a tool that just tells you something is wrong and becomes a tool that automatically fixes it. And it's really smart about how it does this too. These rules follow a hierarchy. So you can set a baseline rule at the very top, at the organization level, something like all VPCs must have flow logs enabled. Then, a specific Teams OU can add more telemetry if they need it, but they can never ever remove or override that organizational baseline. Your core standards are always enforced, no exceptions. This is how you guarantee that minimum level of security everywhere. And creating a rule couldn't be simpler. You define the scope, you pick the service, and you pick the type of telemetry. But check out this last part, because this is unbelievably powerful. You can target resources using tags. Just think about that for a second. You could create one simple rule that says, if any EC2 instance in any account has the tag environment production, it must have detailed 1-minute monitoring turned on. And just like that, you've ensured every single one of your prod servers is properly monitored, today and forever. This really is the heart of it. This is the ultimate promise of enablement rules. You get to define your perfect monitoring setup one time, in one place, and then you just let AWS handle the enforcement across your entire environment. It'll automatically bring every resource, new and old, into compliance. So, what's the real payoff here? When you put all of this together, you're not just changing a tool. You're fundamentally changing how your team operates. You get to stop being firefighters, constantly reacting to monitoring problems. And you become architects, proactively designing and enforcing the standards for your entire organization. So let's just boil this all down to the 4 biggest wins. Number 1, you get one simplified place to audit everything. 2, you get consistent coverage and you can finally kill those dangerous blind spots. 3, you can automate your governance with rules. And maybe the best part of all, the entire auditing feature we looked at is completely free to turn on. You only pay standard AWS config costs if and when you decide to use those automatic enforcement rules. So I'll just leave you with this one question to think about. Right now, in your own AWS environment, what's that one monitoring gap you've always been a little worried about? Now that you know this tool exists, what's the very first blind spot you're going to go fix? Thanks for joining me for this explainer.